All right, welcome to the Winner's Circle, episode 30. In this episode, we'll dive into critical topic of the importance of authentic relationships in business. So join me today as I bring in um, a great person, Brad Englert, an esteemed author, an advisor, a technologist with over 40 years of extensive experience in both the private and public sector. Brad has been a driving force at Accenture for over 22 years. He held the position of Chief Information Officer at the University of Texas at Austin for 8 years and is now the founder of Brad Englert Advisory. So help me welcome Brad. Hello, Brad. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, good to have you here. As we dive in straight up to the point, so what inspired you to delve into the realm of authentic relationships in business, right?
Well, I think it really came down to what I learned in my 22 years with the firm. I joined Arthur Anderson, became Anderson Consulting, became Accenture. When I started, we had 40,000 employees. Now they have 700,000 employees at Accenture. And what we were taught from day one was the importance of building long-term trusting relationships with your peers and with your clients. And that was just expected. And I was fortunate to have very good mentors and bosses, and except for two. But they really modeled the behavior of how to build these relationships. And then when I became the boss, it was my job to mentor people. So when I retired as a partner, they could become a partner. And what I found was that people I started working with years later were at the same level I was as chief information officer. So one of my peers, we started the same week at the firm. 25 years later, we're both chief information officers in very large organizations, and we're still friends. It's just there's a element of trust you build, and it's just more fun.
Thank you for that information, and it's great to know to share your experience itself. Can you, define, because when we talk about authenticity, we have to define it. So when it comes to building professional relationship, what is the definition of being authentic?
Well, there are three principles that I realized when I finished the book were consistent across all the different relationships in business. Number one was understanding a person's goals and aspirations. Just ask your boss, just ask your customer, what are their goals and what do they hope to achieve? And then second is set and manage expectations. People have all sorts of expectations. If you communicate clearly and agree on what the expectations are, then you'll be successful. And thirdly, genuinely care for their success. And I found if you understand, ask someone their goals and aspirations, and clearly set manage expectations, and really care, you will have an authentic, trusting relationship.
All right. So now, the world we are in right now, there's a lot of, I wouldn't want to say fake people. All right. They just pretend for the system. They don't have real trust in them. You can't trust them.
Mhm.
They're not even transparent enough. In your own definition, what role does trust and transparency play in the development of authentic relationship? Because you never can know any other person's motive. So
Well,
what role does trust and transparency play in the development of authentic relationships?
well, if you apply those three principles I just discussed, the result will be building trust. And I always start from the position of I'm going to trust whoever I'm working with because that's a more positive way to approach the relationship until I'm proven wrong. And there are times that um, one of my biggest regrets is trusting people who shouldn't be trusted. But I'm going to go in trusting, I'm going to go in with that attitude to have a positive relationship until proven wrong.
So we should not trust people until they you can get the benefit of doubt.
Well, you should give them the benefit of the doubt until they prove you wrong.
Hmm. All right. So now, when we talk about relationships and building relationship in a working environment, I know we spoke about this at the pre-call, all
Mm.
right, about the remote work environment. So how do you navigate building authentic relationship? Because you talked about the solution, right? But it was for my ears. But I would really love you to, elaborate more on the solutions, especially right now in the world that we have a remote settings that you might never ever have met anybody you're working with. Even in business too, you might have not met, but everything is virtual. So how do you navigate building authentic relationships or environments?
At Accenture, I had a team for a number of years that were stationed all across North America. It was a North America mobilization team. Whenever Accenture outsourced or was asked to outsource IT for a company like Best Buy or Deutsche Bank, my team would swoop in with different skills. But they lived at home, they officed at home until there was a project, and then they would come together. The leadership, my direct reports, and I would get on a good old fashioned conference call. This is before Zoom, and we would just talk about what are the projects that are ongoing, what are the needs of future projects, which staff would be best suited for the different coming up roles. And we would talk every week. So there was a lot of transparency and communication. And then what I would do as the leader is get in a metaphorical Winnebago uh, RV, and I'd go visit each client site, whether it's Whirlpool in Michigan or Deutsche Bank in New York City, and I would sit down and meet with the client and ask, "How is my team doing? What could we do better? Is there anything I can help you with?" And then I would meet with my staff, all of them individually, all levels, and I'd just say, "How's the project going? Is there anything we can do to help you be more successful?" And so I did have a personal touch point at least two or three times through the year. That helped build that trust, and they really knew I cared about it.
That's great. That's great. So now I want to come on this angle, all right? Because now, for the listeners, you already understand that the virtual world should not stop you from building your relationship and your trust, all
That's
right? Because it has disconnected with a lot of people. But that's why I wanted you to share it in this, because you shared it out of this session, and it won't be fair for my listeners, if they don't know about this. And thank you for sharing it again. I really appreciate that. So now, as we move forward, all right, in business, sometimes some people really want to stay transactional.
mm,
So, in your own experience, what are the benefits of prioritizing authentic relationships over transactional interaction in business?
well, transactional relationships tend to be superficial and not really good for either party. I had a vendor one time who would never talk to me until once a year he wanted his check for the maintenance for the year, which was always 10% more than the maintenance in the prior year. I actually hired this company to upgrade software, and it broke things that had been working for 5 years. And I could not get this account rep to care. And he just wanted his money. And so I basically fired the company and got a new company, which was much more responsive and better technology. And that's what happens if you have a transactional relationship. There was no benefit for me to even keep using them anymore. So you can fire your vendors if they're not, if they're only being transactional.
Yeah, I remember. You told me you can fire the vendor, fire the customer. So
That's right.
now let's push it a little bit further because that talks about. So when you talk about fire, you talk about sometimes when you get to a point of disagreement, maybe disagreement or conflict. So what strategies would you give us some, the ways you were able to fire somebody. So what other strategies would you recommend for handling disagreement or maybe conflict within professional relationships, as to making sure you are preserving your, personal relationship or whatever the authentic kind of relationship with them, you know? Yeah.
Great question. I had a manager who reported to me who said, Brad, you understand management means dealing with conflict. And he appreciated that I would not let conflict fester. I would jump in and help to resolve the conflict. That being timely about resolving conflict is something that he really appreciated. I always try to jump in when needed. Now, if it's a direct report having an issue with another direct report and they come to me, my first question is, well, what did they say when you talked with them? And you know what? They hadn't talked with them. And I said, well, I'm not going to rescue you. I'm not going to be your hero. I'm not going to do your thinking. Why don't you go talk to them? And if you can't resolve it, then you both come talk to me. And they soon learned to talk to each other before coming to me.
Honestly, that's a great approach. That means there's a particular strategies that you already cultivated within the years. So now let's look about nurturing relationships. So are there any, now you already, I'm sure you have the ideas. This is how we'll resolve conflict. Are there any specific tools or maybe techniques that you, as in particular, you find effective when you're nurturing authentic relationship with maybe your client or your customers or your vendors? Are there any? If you have, maybe you can just share maybe two or three with us.
So the first thing I do is be intentional of who am I going to build relationships with. I don't leave it to chance. I don't leave it to a networking event where we're handing out business cards. But your boss is a good example. You need to have a good business relationship with your boss. Your direct reports, you need to have a good relationship with your direct reports. Your customers. Some customers are bigger and better customers than others. So focus on them, not on the small customers that are a pain to work with. And vendors, at the university, we spent millions on information technology, but only a handful of vendors were strategic. The network vendor, the HR payroll vendor, things that are just critical for us to. At the university, we had 300,000 devices hooked to the network every day. One of the largest networks on the planet. We hooked to um, the internet at 100 gig per second, which is as fast as one can go. So in order to do that, you have to have a relationship with your vendor to make sure you're on that cutting edge all the time. But so to answer your question, be intentional. If you work in an organization, there's a technique called power mapping, where you identify, well, who are the executives? Well, that's easy on an org chart, but who are your peers and influencers? You might have an influencer who's not high up on the org chart, but he or she could help you navigate the organization. I worked for this huge Research One university, and the chief of staff for the CFO, was a woman who'd worked with the CFO for 20 years. She was a problem solver. She was brilliant. And she helped me navigate a transformation project that modernized their payroll systems, their accounting systems. She was very influential. But on an org chart, just chief of staff, some people might ignore her. Just taking the time to understand who's influential is important. I went to another university, same size, $3 billion budget, and I met with the chief of staff for the chief financial officer. And you know what she said? Brad, I've only been here 2 years. I'm just doing these special projects. You shouldn't waste your time with me. And it's like, well, thanks for telling me. And she actually advised me to work more with the CFO directly. You have to really be intentional.
So you need to be very intentional when you are building your relationship. But another thing I looked at is there are some executives, all right? They really want to build relationships in business, but they are quite shy. Because I'm a business coach, so I've done coaching for some people who are very shy to even interact, and when I mean shy, they are really, really shy. So what's your advice for individuals or business professionals who are introverted, but they aspire to build relationship in their industry, but they're just shy?
So, what I would recommend is investing in a career coach for them. And a career coach is not in the chain of command. And a career coach has a lot of expertise that can come to the table and coach not only the employee, but coach me as the boss. And so this could be for any number of skills that need to be developed. So your role as a career coach is uh, an excellent way to address whatever the skill gaps are.
So thank you so much. So now, we spoke about transactional and authentic relationship. There are quite a number of people that are coming from the world of sales. If you're coming from the world of sales, it's all about transaction. Not all, but most. So what advice would you give to a professional, who are striving to transition from that transactional, mentality to the authentic relationship building? What would be your advice?
So I would focus on my customers' goals and aspirations. No one ever calls me as a consultant when there's no issues, lots of money, and plenty of time. They always called me when there was big issues, no money, and not much time. We all, we're all customers and vendors in certain situations. As you as a customer, you want whoever's providing service to understand what your goals and aspirations are. The best salespeople are the ones who understand the goals and aspirations, meet their obligations that they promise, and then care about it. So, unlike my sales guy who just wanted his money once a year, have an ongoing dialogue with your account rep and let them know what you're trying to achieve so they can decide how they can help you achieve.
So moving forward, all right. In your book, The Spheres of Influence, the book talked about it has a lot of stories, all right. So if I'm going to ask you directly, what story or examples in the book resonate with you the most in terms of illustrating the impact of authentic relationship in business?
Well, let's talk about the sphere. The first sphere is the inner sphere of influence, and those are people who are closest to you, that you have the most direct impact. So your boss, direct reports, all your staff, executive leaders. And the external sphere of influence are people you have less direct impact. Those would be customers, peers and influencers, and strategic vendor partners. When it comes to, I think first chapter is working with your boss. And I think if you have a boss and you have good bosses and bad bosses, I think understanding what their goals are. So in the consulting world, the goals are pretty clear. As a partner, you need to sell millions of dollars of work every year and deliver millions of dollars of work with quality. So if I know what my boss's quotas are, I can help sell and help he or she meet their goals. Now, I'm also expected to get my timesheet in on time, do my employee evaluations on time, to do my billing and receiving on time. Because if I don't do any of that, it shows up on the boss's list. And you don't want to show up on the boss's list. You want to be off the boss's list. In 22 years, I never had a late time report. It's just unexcusable. Billing and collecting, if you didn't bill and collect within a month, then the firm would charge interest on for you and your boss. Well, that's crazy. So I think understanding goals, but setting and managing expectations. I had this boss who was a type A personality, and everything was urgent, urgent, urgent. And she called me one night. It was 5 o'clock. I was trying to leave work relatively on time to have dinner with my wife. And she calls and, Brad, I need a white paper. A white paper. It's like, I'm not going to dinner. That's what I thought. And I literally said, whoa. I didn't say no because that would set type A personalities go crazy if you say no. But I said, whoa, when do you need this white paper? Because it sounded like urgent. And she said, well, let me check my calendar. She looked, I need it in 2 weeks. Okay. How many pages do you want this white paper to be? Oh, three. I was thinking 10. Do you have an example of a white paper that you could give me so I would know what you're looking for? Yeah. Ask David. I did one 10 years ago on XYZ Corporation. I went home, came in the next day, found a staff person. I said, you have a week and a half to do the research. It's a three-page paper. We'll get it to the boss so she has time before the client meeting. And before I learned to say whoa, I would have called my wife and canceled dinner, upsetting her and me. I would have written a 10-page paper overnight, delivered it the next day, and got yelled at. A lose, lose, lose situation. Saying whoa is a way to create some space and mental space and time to truly understand what's needed, especially if you have a type A boss.
So clarity is very important. So if you're not called to ask those questions, maybe you would not know that's gonna be in 2 weeks' time, and you panic and think is she needs this right now. So it's a very great thing, that I'm learning right there. I know one or two things, but this particular thing I'm learning that, which is great. Relationship is also very key. When you're dealing with your boss or you know even people you're mentoring, it's quite very important too. If she had also reached out and say, you know what, I'm going to need you to do this in 2 weeks,
Mm,
would have been better too, which is great. So now that take me to mentoring and coaching,
mhm.
because we have quite a number of business coaches that listen to our programs, and mentors too. So how do you incorporate the principle of authentic relationships into mentoring or even coaching relationships?
Well, really, for the people I mentor, I follow the three principles. And when I took over the central IT organization at the university, 330 people, I had 7 direct reports. I sat down with each one of them and said, okay, what's going well? What could we improve on? What are you trying to achieve? Do you want to be the CIO someday? If you do, I'll help you get there. So having that dialogue is very important. And then helping set some goals. What if your mentor, what do you want to achieve in the coming year? What training do you need? I used to tell my staff that we never cancel training. We have to model the behavior. We go to training, your staff go to training, especially in the IT world. and then you follow up on it. We actually had an orientation for all new employees to go through the values of the organization. Often the new employees wouldn't show up. Well, we kept a list and we invited them to the next one. They were too busy. It's like, no, this is important. So, I think coaches it's a wonderful opportunity. What we used to do at the firm and at the university is 360 reviews. And 360 reviews, you get feedback from people who report to you, people who are above you, and your peers. And at the firm, we would look at the values of the firm, so training and mentoring being one of them, and you would get evaluated on those values. How well were you demonstrating those values? And from that, you would get coaching, maybe a career coach or training, specialized training. We never used them for performance evaluation. It was off cycle from performance because this was more how do you build the skills of your team. And then at the university, did 360 reviews. You include your customers, so you get feedback that you just wouldn't get if you did not do that. And it's quantifiable.
All right, thank you for that also. So while I'm just going to put that in, I want to just make a statement. There's always a downside too when it comes to um, the principles of authentic relationship. All right, which could be, you know, living a fake, um, pretending to be what you are not. All right. So because there are quite a number of people, they try as much as possible to just live. They are different in real life compared to what they seem online.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's the note I want to state on that. They try to be what they are not, but they are different from what they are in real life. So what
Mm-hmm.
if I'm going to ask you now, how can individuals ensure that their online interactions or their online personality, reflect their true selves and values? Because you can see them being, the all nice person, even if you have like a virtual or remote setting, they can be whatever they want to be, all right? Just pretending what they want to be, just pretending um for the platform or whatever they did. But in real life, they're not what they are. Some are very outspoken online, but when you see them, I don't know if you've ever been in that situation. Even chatting with them, they look very outspoken. They talk bold in
Yeah.
capital letter. All right. But you meet them and like, are you the person I chat with? He said, yes, I'm the one. But you can't really connect because it's different from what the person you chat with online.
So
All
I
right.
had
So
so I had two
yes.
direct reports who were arguing with each other on email and copying me in. And it's like, and it was just back and forth, back and forth. And so I went and got each one of them, and we went into an empty office. And I said, I want you to talk to each other when you have problems. I do not want to have email wars. In fact, I will throw the email server out the window into the street below if you keep this up. So you need to talk to each other. So as the boss, you need to stop bad behavior when you see it. But I had a boss one time who was not forthcoming on his goals and aspirations. In fact, he prided himself on being a chess master, and he's always thinking 5 to 7 moves ahead. Well, I said, if you would tell me and my peers, your direct reports, where you were heading, we could all help you get there. And he never did. He never let us know. And frankly, we were frustrated, and it was the detriment of the organization. And he finally left. I mean, I couldn't solve that. He actually, when he first came to the university, asked me why we were doing some big initiative. And he said, there was no case for change made. And I said, well, sir, with all due respect, we developed a master plan for this initiative, and the first chapter is called A Case for Change. Just because you didn't know it doesn't mean it didn't happen. But because it wasn't done when he was there, he acted like it didn't exist. That master plan was endorsed by the leadership of the university. But because he was not there, and that's just like stepping on a garden rake. I don't know if you've stepped on a garden rake before. I did when I was a teenager. It really hurts. Your brain kind of jiggles. I left. I retired after that confrontation because it just wouldn't go anywhere. Sometimes you have to leave.
So I think one thing I learned is from what you're saying is especially, you making your point. There's some part you talked about knowing when to leave, even firing your vendor, firing your
Yeah.
customers.
Yep.
Sometimes knowing when to say, you know what, I need to leave because relationship is very key if it's coming from the other side too. So it needs to be balanced.
Every week. And it's like, stop asking me for free stuff. I don't do that. But she would get rewarded if she could get free stuff from the vendors. And it was kind of like kabuki theater. We kind of go through these motions. And well, a firm like yours should know that we needed XYZ. And I said, well, we did know you needed XYZ, but you didn't ask for it. So we didn't bid it. But I'd be happy to do a change order for you. And by the way, I'm going to increase the contingency to 30% because you're such a pain to work with. And you know what she said? I don't blame you. And when we finally finished the project, my staff, 15 of them, stood up, left the site that we had worked there for 18 months. No one even said goodbye. And I told her, I said, I'm never working for you again. And you know what she said? I don't blame
Yeah, just like you said also, know when to work out.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so now in this world right now that we have a whole lot of fake people with different reason, maybe different minds trying to scheme or whatever the thing is. So how do you stay true to yourself, while adapting to the evolving dynamics of professional relationships in the world we are in right now? That everything is transactional. So how do you stay true to the authentic when everybody is being transactional?
Well, you can't worry about everybody. You have to worry about yourself. And what I would do is say, do my values align with this organization? And with the firm, their emphasis on mentoring, training. I was a partner for 10 years. 2 months before I retired, I was asked to teach a class in our global training center, 200 people all around the world on project management. I taught it with other partners. It was the most fun, but the culture of learning from day one to 22 days later, you can resonate with that. When I got to the university in my organization, they did not have values listed. And the organization was sort of if there's a problem, they swoop in like Superman and be heroes and save the day. And it's like, why don't we plan ahead so we don't have things break as often and actually focus on customer service, not being heroic? I had one fellow who wouldn't answer his phone when the service was broken. How do you not answer your phone? He said, well, I don't like answering my phone. And I said, well, guess what? Our value is customer service. So if you don't start answering your phone, you're going to need to work somewhere else, which she eventually did move on. But you have to have the values aligned.
All right, that's a great word. So now I know every individuals they have a ritual or a practice, that they employ to nurture whatever, you know, whatever they do. All right. So if you can walk me through, or the listeners through, the practice you employ to nurture and maintain authentic relationships over time.
Well, that it's actually pretty easy. So at the university, I would put on my calendar recurring meetings with the people I was building relationship with. Very easy to do. Some of my peers I would meet with every 4 weeks, like public safety. On IT, public safety, it wasn't a question of if there would be a problem, it's when there was a problem, and we needed to work together. We had a shooting, we had a murder, we had a bomb scare, we had the power go out, which hadn't gone out in 20 years. We learned to work together to anticipate outages and then practiced how to work together with outages. Now, someone who I had less direct impact with, I would meet every 6 weeks or 8 weeks, but I would put those on the calendar for the year. And it was just an easy way to just make sure you stay connected. And some people say, oh, I don't have time for that. It's not that hard. A lot of people need to eat lunch. You don't have to buy them lunch, but just meet them for lunch. Don't create all these barriers. And then what I would do is I asked all my direct reports to also meet with 7 to 10 peers and influencers. So we had about 100 relationships we built over time that became our nervous system. Because you would get feedback on how we're doing, you would get ideas of what was needed. You could tell them that there are projects coming. So, hey, in 6 months we're going to replace 21,000 phones on campus. We're going to be at your college at this month. We have it all worked out. You won't have to worry. But you gave them a heads up. And then you'd hear rumors. I had a rumor that there wasn't any diesel in the generator for the data center. Well, good rumor. Contact the data center director. He goes, no, we check it every month and we flush it out once a year. And then and the other generator was on natural gas. So if you don't have that ability to hear things, it could grow into a big problem.
Thank you so much for that point of view. So now there's one thing that came up to my mind when you were talking about contacts, all right? Because I feel like sometimes it's quite hard to maintain a large contact. So how do you maintain authentic relationships with a wide network of contact without spreading yourself too thin, without getting drained at some point?
The beauty of an authentic business relationship is there are times when you can go years and not talk to that person, but if you had a successful interaction, a successful project where success breeds success, then a decade could go by and you could pick up the phone, get on Zoom, and it'll be like you never left. There's a woman I worked with many years ago. We had 3 successful projects, and I got to meet her son, who was 5 years old, cute little guy. 20 years later, she calls me and says, my son is applying to be an attorney at the university. Can you help him? It's like, of course I can help him. And so I talked to him and I said, university attorneys have an association where they share information all across the country. When I needed a contract with Google, my lawyer contacted this group and got the contract from Berkeley. We don't start from scratch. So her son was able to research the group, research what issues they're dealing with, and he got the job.
That's a great one. You know, it shows that you can also build a relationship that is going to serve your purpose even in the nearest future. So it doesn't have to be now. So you can
Right.
keep nurturing them. But now the question now is, yes, keep nurturing them is good. You know, do you think, or do you think the relationship can just get like, they say out of sight is out of mind, kind of. So what if the relationship just goes out like that because, they don't get to see often, maybe like you say in 10, 20 years right now. So what if, or is there a way you can actually keep up? Maybe like every year you send
Yeah.
like a New
Yep.
Year message or something,
Yeah.
that they know that, oh, this person still exists. Or how do you think that approach?
A really big problem with a global technology firm where the service they provided would go down for half a day, which didn't happen with other services. And I couldn't get the attention of the company. And so I just thought about who in my relationships could I call to help? And the CIO at the university. And I thought of two graduates of the university who one hired me 25 years ago at Accenture, and they both loved the university, and they were on the executive committee of Accenture, which is a big deal. And I sent a message to both of them saying, I need to get to the highest senior vice president of this company because we're in pain and I can't get any help. The guy who hired me lives in Florida, and I was picturing this missile. He said, I'll call him. So I pictured in my mind this missile coming from Florida and hitting the West Coast on Monday morning. I got a call at 10 a.m. on Monday morning from the senior vice president of that company. And I said, Susan, we have a 5 alarm fire, and you guys are giving a 1 alarm response. And you nor I do not want this to be in the press. Please help us. And she did. She sent a team of engineers. Some of these programmers have never been outside before, never saw a customer before. I said, here's my executive assistant. Watch how hard this is. And over a year, we fixed about 40 different technical issues. And then it became a reliable service. But just to step back and say, sometimes you need to call a former boss or two who can get you the influence you need at the highest levels. And to the credit of the company, they stepped up.
Hmm. All right, that's very, very important. That's the benefit of maintaining your relationship even with your boss and not having to say, okay, now I'm no longer working in this place. My boss is my enemy or whatever the thing is. So it's still building that relationship, as the year goes by, because
Yep.
who knows, there's always an opportunity to meet up. So now what are your advice, or would I say your words, your final words to business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders in their own right about, building authentic relationship in the business world?
I would say be intentional. Think about who your most important relationships are. Focus on them and put it on your calendar. It's not that hard. You don't have to be born with this skill. You can learn it and just have to practice.
So you talked about, okay, as we're rounding up, but I have to just quickly move back to when you talked about putting in, put the timing or the strategy or whatever, building that relationship in your calendar. We know in the world right now, there is priority. There's too much of things. We do too much of things at a time. You're doing this, you're doing that. There's too many things to do. So how would you advise people can actually manage their time to have enough time to be able to, build authentic relationships with their business partners, with their customers, and with their clients? Authentic relationship that is not transactional. How do you? I know you've answered some one or two questions, but I'm talking about the timing factor right now. So yeah.
Yeah. So with my boss, I would meet my boss once a week and we would talk. And make sure we were aligned, make sure I understood, except for that one bad boss, know what he was going. With my direct reports, I would meet with them in their office once a week for half an hour. Why in their office? Because I wanted their teams to see me walking through the workspace, saying hi, thanking them for what they're doing, and them to know their boss had the ear of the chief information officer. I also was able to walk across campus. Well, when I do that, I run into customers. I run into associate deans. I run into IT people. So weekly. Now, when it comes to my peers, every 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or 8 weeks, depending on how often our organizations work together. And with customers, I would meet with a major customer with the executive every month. And I would meet every month and talk about what's going well, what's coming the next month, and then if there are any issues. So I had this one customer. It was a great team. We had a great team. They had a great team marching towards the conclusion of the project where we were falling behind. And I said, um, Mr. Executive, we need more resources. I can bring some to the table. I need you to bring some to the table. Because I had met with him once a month for 9 months, we built a trusted relationship. Now, what would have happened, Jay, if I had waited until the 9th month to walk in with a big problem? I would have been a bad consultant. And because we had built that mutual trust along the way, neither of us hesitated to put the right resources in, and it was the quietest conclusion ever. And he wrote a letter afterwards thanking me for doing that. So the timing depends on the relationship. My vendors, uh, I would meet with the vendors quarterly. I would meet with my account rep. I would meet with their boss, and sometimes the boss's boss on a big, multi-million-dollar vendor. I like to get all the people knowing what we're doing, what they can do to help us. I had one vendor say, "Well, if you outsource all your computing to us, it'll be great." I said, "Well, how much will I save?" And the guy goes, "Well, it actually cost you 20% more." I said, "Why are you talking to me?" So I got a new account rep, and then we worked much better together with his boss. And, I actually had to go up the food chain to get a new account rep, but quarterly, because you don't need to meet monthly with them. Your staff are meeting monthly with them.
All right, thank you so much. That's powerful. So there's no excuse, when it comes to timing. You can always like schedule your time and meet up with your relationships in business. So
Sometimes
yeah,
you'll spend more time trying to solve a problem because you didn't do the mechanics, the fundamentals in the beginning.
mm. So the fundamental is very important. So the foundation is very important. Thank you so much for that information. Brad, as we near the end of this insightful conversation, I would love to hear your recommendation for 5 resources, either books or, you know, anything that you would recommend that our audience can explore to deepen their understanding of building and nurturing authentic relationships in business. I
Well,
will,
on
good.
my webpage, bradenglert.com, there's a tab called resources. And I recommend these are the books that helped me the most throughout my career. And so in the resources page, I have a picture of the cover of the book and a brief explanation of why this is important. And I think you just pick and choose which of those books you think would help you. Some of them are classic business books, others are a little more esoteric, but I explain why each of those were important for me. During many times when I was mentoring people, I would give them copies of different books based on what they were dealing with. All those books are listed on the resources page. Also, if they go to bradenglert.com Winner's Circle, they will get a page that I built just for you that will offer a free sample of the book, a few pages, a link to Amazon if you want to buy Audible or ebook or a book. And then the third is you can sign up for a free chat with me, 30-minute chat.
All right. So thank you so much for that information. Oh, you've seen it, so you can. I'm gonna get the link and I'm gonna put it in the description or put it um in part of the under the chat, so you can
Great.
always click on it and you can check that out. So I've been able to get a lot of information today, and because of Winner Circle, you'll be able to get a free chat with him, and which might cost you, probably thousands of dollars without that, and also probably you'll be getting some discount too, right? So this is great. So if I'm going to make my last word and a recap for today's episode, today we talked about really real relationship in business with Brad, and it made me see how important it is to have genuine connections at work. Even, all the stories Brad shared, even the tips showed me that being true to yourself can have a big impact on your career and personal life. For example, Brad got a reference from his former boss. So those are the things I looked at. Another thing I looked at on this conversation is Brad told me that being real is key to building trust and strong relationship in business. And also, he was able to share helpful advice on how to keep it genuine in online work setups, which honestly is relevant in today's world. And I also liked how you explained setting boundaries while still staying true to yourself. It's a tricky, balance many of us strive for. I really appreciate that. And also, you suggested on focusing on real connections over just business transactions, of which a whole lot of people are used to. Just keep it business, no friendship, nothing. So, but you said it's very important and you talked about the value of honesty and openness in all our dealings. And also, you highlighted that authentic relationships go beyond networking. It's creating meaningful bonds that benefit everyone. So as we finish up, I'm reminded of how crucial authentic relationships are in business. For me, right now, I know that they're the base for growth, teamwork, and triumph. So I'm just going to tell my listeners, make sure you build that authentic relationship. I know most of you are built with that mentality. Not all of you, some of you, believe that, okay, just keep it business, no relationship. But guess what? You- you- once you build that relationship, it's gonna even save you more than how much you think you're gonna gain from just one-off business relationship. No, no, no relationship with your partner, your business partner, or whoever. All right, you need to take note of that. Even bosses too. It's very important to build a little bit of relationship, authentic business relationship with some of your, people you work with, so that they can understand you easily. So it won't be like a war zone. Most offices are like a war zone. All right. Which I understand that, some people are keeping their businesses just straight up, no, but it's good. Whatever you think is good. But just like what Brad said, authentic relationship will save you a lot than what transactional will do. All
Yep.
right. So, as we round up, as we wrap up this insightful episode, I want to say, Brad, what are the last word you have before we round up finally?
Just just do it. Just do it. Don't put it off. Just start with one relationship, your boss or a direct report or a customer. You don't have to conquer the world. Just try one and see how it works.
All right. So just like you said, try one and see how it works, then you can decide. So for more in-depth guidance on this topic, be sure to check out Brad's recent book, Spheres of Influence, so you can understand and read more and learn more. So I'll say you should stay tuned for our next episode of the Winner Circle podcast, where we'll continue to bring you engaging discussion on business strategies and success principles. So make sure you like and subscribe and follow. All right, see you next time. And thank you for being
Thank
with the Winner Circle. Thank you, Brad. All right.